Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 279 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to add Cobalt components to the bus. Enjoy! All this seems to be working pretty well, so we're just going to have to kind of wait it out and let them finish up with their resources. But for now, we can see what we can make with our new ore types here. I don't think there's anything new we can make quite yet because I've been pretty careful about not researching things that we didn't have resources for. So like cobalt oxide, not yet. Cobalt steel plates, not really. And titanium. Well, it goes into a lot of things, but they're all red because they haven't been researched. And it looks like we are at the end of our buffer, so now the rate is going to be what the factory can actually keep up with, and that's not much. But it'll keep going. So we got lots of stuff here. Not too much left before we're done with all the blue science. But let's take care of the things we can. Of course, first things first, we got to get to blue belts. So first we got to do cobalt processing, which we take those steel plates and just make the gears and the ball bearing versions of those, which is the same as the other gears and ball bearings. And now we get some stuff here. So with logistics, we get our access to blue belts. Just a red belt with those cobalt components and aluminum. And then the white circuits for the express splitters. And white circuits and lubricant to make the loaders. And then that gives us express inserters, which are the blue inserters that have red inserters added to them and those same resources. And as far as speed, the fast inserter swings at the rate of 864 degrees a second, where blues do 1296. And the inserter throughput mod will dynamically update with those stats. So grab it. And of course we'll want the stack inserter version of them. So we'll hit that. And then if you remember, there's this very awkwardly placed filter inserter here. That was the blue filter inserters that for some reason is just green science that was all by itself. But that's the other component of this. And below that gives us the stack inserter version of the same thing. And we can also jump in here and finally get access to long inserters too. I guess I could have researched that earlier and pounded my way through this science, but I didn't want to research things that we couldn't build. But that will finally give us the ability to have inserters that can reach from 3 squares away. And that fills up the queue. It'll probably research rather quickly. But while it's doing that, we can take a look at the factory and see how it's going. The bots are continuing to place that concrete, now that they have full coverage of this southern area anyway. And they finished in a lot of places, but if you notice, they broke a few more pumps for reasons that some of the pumps get destroyed. I think it's just the offshore pumps mod changed how they did things, so some of those older pumps are kind of glitched. So we should go down there and replace those. And we do have some in the inventory, so we'll just plop them in there and get it going again. I don't think any of these were destroyed, which is interesting. Let's see, how is the volume for some of these? I adjusted them again. Seems better. Not absurdly loud anymore. Although I did notice that these machines right here don't have modules. They seem like they're kind of running behind here. They could potentially benefit from those speed modules, so I'll throw them in so they can get caught up. They're using the salt to make sodium hydroxide. It creates a byproduct of the hydrochloric acid, but as long as there's space, this is an efficient way of making the sodium hydroxide. I kind of feel like sodium hydroxide should also be on our acids network. It's not really an acid component, but it's a result of acid. So I kind of want it to be connected. So let's see if we can continue it. Looks like the wire is up here. So if we do that, now we can keep an eye on sodium hydroxide. I think it's trying to keep it, yeah, to 20,000, which makes sense. The rest of these tanks, the intent is to keep them at around 10,000, if possible. They go higher than that if they're getting filled by byproducts. Otherwise, bus is operating okay. Making lots and lots of extra resources. But they'll run as long as they can until they max out, and then that'll be that for a while. What about research? Anything break here? Seems like it's going. The research at the beginning was quick because there was a big buffer, and now that it's gone, things have slowed down a bit. Well, we can get started on the process. We're going to need to request that cobalt steel, and it should be on the train now. We check the inventory. There it is. Cobalt steel plate. So if we make a request, it will come. And this is a main bus item. It's used in lots of things, so might as well bring it here. Let's see. Well, this is as good a place as any. So we'll say cobalt steel. Have a little warning here that hasn't popped up in a long time, but I'm still going to keep updating them. And then we need to make our request. I think it's 512. Yeah. And we got our warning going off. Why is that? Just because we were flipping that on and off, probably. Let's make sure that it's on the right network here. It's requesting from the coil network. So it would be over here. Oh, there it goes. So I guess it's on the right network. Just had to wait. And it's making a second request because it would prefer to have a second train, but it is unavailable. So that request makes sense. And then we need to pick a line for our cobalt steel. Well, this one on the end seems to be available. Then the question is, what do these gear wheels go into? They go into enough things that it's probably worth putting on the bus. And the bearings go into the exact same things, but also probably worth putting on the bus here. Let's get this area up here fully covered by bots, so as we're working on things, our inventory will stay nice and clean. All good? Kind of. There's a couple of empty spaces in here. Might as well fill it up in preparation for the concrete robots eventually making it down here. Hey, and there we go. Research is done. Now we should be, well, reasonably well covered, but there's annoying tiny little sections that aren't covered. So where are they? Can't really see them here, because I guess they're underneath the bus, so it's a little hard to see. There we go, there's the other ones. Ah, nice. Has the train got here yet? Yep. And there it is, loading up on our cobalt. Okay, so now that we have robots here keeping us connected, we should be able to more easily place these belts. Of course, we are consuming it very quickly, so might still want to have a bit of a buffer of it. Well, we have some intermediates to make. Just take it down to the end, I suppose. I don't want to crowd here in case it gets bigger. So I guess we'll go up here. And as far as numbers, I guess we'll match what we did previously, which was something like this. So you could probably just use the same setup. And it puts out about 30. So we might as well reuse it. Why reinvent the wheel? Although it is actually going to be different, because we're not going to need to have these plate choppers in here. So it's going to be significantly simpler. These do take productivity modules. But these are set for productivity 2s, so now that we have 5s, that might change things a bit. We need to wait for the rest of the robots to get here, so we can actually see how fast that's going to be. But in the meantime, we can hook everything up. Feels so good to be finally working on the Cobalt tier of items, even if it will be rather slow for a while. Come on, robots, where are you at? I'm feeling like they're taking kind of a long way to get here. How have the fish been doing? It's not running, but they did grind through that polluted fish water, so it looks like the settings that we did here make sense, and they do. Let's see, we got to get this changed now for cobalt steel bearings, in case any of it finds its way in our inventory. They will be properly dumped. I think that bearings are one thing we don't really carry in our inventory because we don't really need them. And the cobalt steel plates, we don't either. The gear wheels, not really. I mean, we could put this stuff in our inventory, but it's not really used for that much, and our inventory tends to be pretty crowded, so it's probably not worth taking up a slot just to do that. Okay, so what kind of output is all of this? Well, it needs to be set to the correct recipe. I don't know if that really matters. Looks like they're all crafted at the same speed, so it probably doesn't matter, but as it turns out, if the recipe isn't what you want, you won't make the thing that you want. Try this again. What do we get? Well, 51. That's way more than we need. And it looks like we're creating way more of the steel balls than we need, but that probably makes sense because they're just in the middle here. So I wonder if this would be balanced. It isn't. That's why we're kind of alternating. But because the steel balls are created in such large quantities, you see that to make 50 bearings, we need twice as many of the balls. It makes sense why they're being direct inserted in perhaps a slightly bigger setup than is necessary. So if we do all of those, we get what we want. But if we did these, we wouldn't. So that will work. We just won't need the top one here. And that's there to pick up any of the junk balls. So we probably should just move it up. And this is to dump any extra of the bearings we might have in our inventory back in here to get used wherever that is. Are each one of these machines plenty fast? The yellow inserter is actually kind of just barely, but I think it'll be fine. And we need to put those somewhere. Looks like we've got another spot on the end here. Actually, now that we're picking up cobalt steel here that we probably won't need for anything, let's put it in here and make sure it's removed from our inventory. Where are they going to actually put it, though? Well, that's not what we wanted. This needs to be the ball bearings. if it doesn't have anywhere to put it, it'll probably just dump it in here, which is the dumping ground for random things. But the best place to put it would be at the beginning of the bus. And there's a lot of similarly done setups around here. Let me just put this in here. Say we're looking for the cobalt steel. So it has somewhere to go. And let's make our bearings. Looks like they are having trouble keeping up. Not that it matters too much because it's full. Now we need to do the gears as well. But it's also going to be quite different than this because there's no plate choppers. So let's manually calculate this here. Cobalt steel gears, 30. But all productivities. Each individual machine is not very fast in either direction. So pulls in, drops off. Let's get this flipped around. And put in there. Okay. So we need 18 of these. 6, 12, 18. And one more. 2 spaces and slam it in there. Let's see, we need a new bus line. I guess the space after green. Man, those are very similar in color. Very hard to tell the difference. But it is cobalt. Interesting that our resources are kind of filling up here rather than making rubber. Not really sure why. Okay, productivities are here. Let's give it a shot. Yeah, seems pretty good. And extra belts right there. Let's do another trash request for those gears, which we won't need. Okay, that should be everything we need for the blue belts. But I would like to check up on what's going on with the rubber. I mean, we have a perfectly sufficient amount of rubber, but it's not full. And it basically should be using everything to make rubber. So the fact that it's not, and it's putting it over here to get burned, is odd. So short on the styrene, which is short on the ethyl benzene, which is short on hydrofluoric, which isn't being requested. Is that because it got pulled up in the process of working on acids? Interesting. So no chlorine. So titanium is stopped. And there's no cobalt at all. Let's see, gold is building up because no chlorine. So we've got a couple of things to check. Well, as far as cobalt, I think we are just double overloaded. Yeah, we're at 80k of the nickel, which comes on this belt, and 82k of zinc on this belt. So we are physically unable to make cobalt at the moment. So we'll just have to wait it out. So I believe that was hydrofluoric acid. Let's double check to make sure. Whoa. Whoa. Are the robots done? Look at that. They have completed paving this entire section, which I guess means give them more to pave. Of course. The reward for finishing your work is more work. So, hydrofluoric. Let's make sure before we go down the rabbit hole of figuring out where this acid went. And we can kind of follow it to see. Maybe it never was put on the bus. That would be interesting. I don't know how we would have survived this long. Liquid fuel. I'm not seeing hydrofluoric acid anywhere. It's taking the gas as an input. I wonder if that command I used to fix it somehow deleted it. Because I'm kind of curious how this process has been running for this long. If it never actually received a request for the input acids. That seems kind of weird. But maybe it was in place at some point. But it seems like this would be a great place to put it. Yeah, it's interesting that there's no supply depots for acid, so maybe this is the only acid that we're actually delivering with drones. Well, we definitely want to pump in here because without it, they will fill this to the maximum capacity. And will it let us connect? Nope. I think we need to do the awkward writer and reader because we can't directly connect. To a fluid depot. So there's the writer. There's the reader. Well, I guess we only need the reader. We don't actually need the writer. I'm guessing it will mostly be on and we don't need to have the backup of having the writer in there. But it's generally smart to have it though, so let's just put it in there. So we'll connect the three. So first it's reading if there's anything in there. And we only want this pump to run if, let's say, there's less than 5,000 acid in there. And this one requires that there be, how about at least 1,000 acid for it to even turn on at all. So it has been disabled. And the acid's over there. I think that's probably a good place to grab it from. And now it's flowing. It gets it to above 5,000, turns off. And that clicks on, turn on the depot. And has the drone request been made? Looks like it, because there it goes. And it's 1 out of 1. So that should continue now. Time to drag and drop some concrete, lag the computer, but be careful where we put this because we don't want to go over any of our bus lines. So maybe we'll stop at the road for now. And lag. Come on, computer, catch up. It's a lot faster when there's only 2 tiles width to go through. Look at that. That's not an army of bots, that's a wall of bots. Okay, so there's another... So there's more bus lines up there, so we have to be careful to avoid those. It looks like we're getting to the end of part of our network. Whoop. Don't want to cover this up just yet, although I guess it doesn't really matter because then we can just kind of fix it ourselves. Oh well. I'll just have to be careful. Guess we'll go with this for now. That's quite a bit of coverage, although it's a lot less than before. But we'll let them run. So chlorine was the other thing that was low. Let's see what's going on there. So there's no chlorine gas. And it's because it's maxed out on sodium hydroxide. Interesting. It's like, how can we solve this? Because these are running primarily just to top up this warehouse. But they're a lesser desirable way than others. But they also run to make chlorine, and they can fill up on the sodium hydroxide. So how would we handle that? I think inventory sensor would help here. Let's grab like 3 of them. We don't need to check every single unit here because the ones up here would empty their inventories first, and the ones down here would be last. So we could probably just get away with checking one of these. And which way is it? Wires away? Looks like it. So let's get combinator in there. So if you look at the input signals, it's got saline water as the input, sodium hydroxide as the output, 100% because it's at 100% of its crafting, and also the status of the modules, which it is too. But we're here for the sodium hydroxide. Let's just say if it's more than, I don't know, like 20. Or actually, like 100. It's more than half full. Output 1 green square. And we should be getting a green square. Let's do this again. 2 more times. So now we've got 3 green squares because every machine is overloaded. And we need 1 more combinator here, which we've got in our inventory. Pulling off of this warehouse. And we'll say if sodium hydroxide is less than 10,000, give us a green square. And finally, connect this all to this thing here. And the enabled condition is we have to have at least a green square. So basically, what that means is either this warehouse is low, or any of these stacks are overloaded on sodium hydroxide. And really, it's just checking the first one, but since that's the most limited one, that one makes sense. Although, we also potentially could just check for the status of chlorine, which actually, now that I think about it, might be a better way of doing it. So, although it was neat to do that, probably don't need to do it that way. I'll leave it in place though, because it was kind of a neat way of doing things. So, we will grab chlorine, kind of do the same check. But chlorine gas is below like 5,000 or something. Below 5,000, we'll get a green square. So for now, we will unhook these outputs. Still might want them later. So it's either this warehouse is low or we are low on chlorine. And it will just dump enough to keep the chlorine flowing. But now we should be making our resources again. And we are making the gold, and we are making the titanium as well. It's just not coming in very fast because we're so limited on our ability to make it. And cobalt remains stopped. And it will for a while. Until we use up some of this zinc, either making the solder or any of these alloys here. Gunmetal, brass, and bronze. So we're just going to have to wait for a train to come by. And they will, eventually, as long as we are building stuff. And actually, in setting up our blue belts, since we're probably going to want to build a bunch of them all at once to have a nice buffer, you know, I don't know how much 2,000 blue belts uses as far as resources. Something tells me quite a lot. Because you see each one of them has a lot of random plates in it. So, it should go pretty well here. But unfortunately, working on blue belts and inserters is going to wait until the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.